I'm just going to read the previous translation, and I'll read this one. The Gandharvas, the Kimpurushas, and the Kinnaras sounded thousands and thousands of kettle drums and trumpets again and again, and they sang in great jubilation, declaring, "How exalted a person is Bali Maharaj, and what a difficult task he has performed." Even though he knew that Lord Vishnu was on the side of his enemies, he nonetheless gave the Lord the entire three worlds in charity. Today's verse. The unlimited Supreme Personality of Godhead, who had assumed the form of Vamana, then began increasing in size, acting in terms of the material energy, until everything in the universe was within his body, including the earth, the planetary systems, the sky, the directions, the various holes in the universe, the seas, the oceans, the birds, beasts, human beings, the demigods, and the great saintly persons. Purport. Bali Maharaj wanted to give charity to Vamanadev, but the Lord expanded his body in such a way that he showed Bali Maharaj that everything in the universe is already in his body. Actually, no one can give anything to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for he is full in everything. Sometimes we see a devotee offers Ganges water to the Ganges. After taking his bath in the Ganges, a devotee takes a palmful of water and offers it back to the Ganges. Actually, when one takes a palmful of water from the Ganges does not lose anything. And similarly, if a devotee offers a palmful of water to the Ganges does not increase in any way. But by such an offering, the devotee becomes celebrated as a devotee of Mother Ganges. Similarly, when we offer anything with devotion and faith, what we offer does not belong to us, nor does it enrich the opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if one offers whatever he has in his possession, he becomes a recognized devotee. In this regard, the example is given that when one's face is decorated with a garland and sandalwood pulp, the reflections of one's face in the mirror automatically becomes beautiful. The original source of everything is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the original source also. Therefore, when the Supreme Personality of God is decorated, the devotees and all living entities are decorated automatically. Namo Vishnu Raya Krishna Vasaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Name Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharne Nirvishesha Shundivari Paschati Teshatarane Vanchakalpa Tubasa Kripa Sindhavyevacha Patitanam Pamaribhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namanma. And Srila Prabhupada used to talk about the devotees in the early days like being like dancing peacocks, right? So devotees are automatically decorated. Very much relevant in modern society, where there's such an obsession now with bodily looks and operations. Certainly when I was a youth, we were still obsessed with looks, but you couldn't get operations quite so easy. All the strange things that we do nowadays. And of course I did see on the news about one girl who had lots of operations, and I must admit she looked quite a lot worse afterwards. So maybe that's the... they talk about things being what is it, the term they use now? Counterintuitive, right? It's a very popular term, counterintuitive. I don't know if I actually agree with it. They say counterintuitive means you do something which goes against, it goes against what seems obvious, right? But I disagree with counterintuitive, because sometimes intuitive, I don't know about you, I go on my intuition, and intuition often tells me to go against the grain, right? My intuition actually tells me, do the opposite, right? And that's what Krishna consciousness is about. It's about doing the opposite to what appears to be the obvious thing to do. I always give that example of when I used to shave my head many years ago. I never used to let anyone else shave my head, because the first time I did it, someone practically chopped my head off. And so I never, from then, I learned a lesson very quick in the movement, I've got a big gash. So I always used to shave my own head. And when you're trying to shave, you've got a mirror and another mirror at the back, right? And you go one way, and the razor seems to go the other way, right? You ever notice when you're doing things in the mirror, you sort of go one way, and the thing goes the other way, so you have to sort of go in the opposite direction, right? To go in the right direction. It's a bit like that in Krishna consciousness. You have to sort of go against the flow. We're going against the flow of this material energy. We're going against Maya. So sometimes I find, intuition sometimes, they say counterintuitive, but sometimes intuition says do the opposite. Example, the other day I keep getting these bad sore throats, and sometimes I try and drink all ginger, the whole thing. People come up to me and say, Indri, have you tried ginger? I said, look, if I eat any more ginger, I'm going to be, any more turmeric, any more honey, I'll turn into a bee or something, right? So I get a bit fed up with it. So the other day I tried, someone reminded me of Srila Prabhupada. Do you know what Srila Prabhupada for sore throat was? You know what Srila Prabhupada's remedy was? It's based on halva, chickpea halva, hot, right? It's counterintuitive, isn't it? Right? You shouldn't have any sugar when you got an infection or anything. It worked, actually. I don't know, apart from anything else, I felt great. You ever had chickpea halva? Huh? No, I never made chickpea halva. It's great stuff. We used to eat on Sankirtan, before we went on Sankirtan, watch out, everyone, It gives you a lot of energy. But and also if you get sore throat, hot jalebis, I hear, right? Sounds like a good excuse to me. Hot jalebis. I think also for madness is rasgulas, right? Everyone pretends they're mad, right? Hot rasgulas. They shouldn't be cold rasgulas. They're best hot. So yes, sometimes we have to go against the flow. Very painful sometimes. I used to sometimes think in the early days how painful it was trying to become a devotee. And you sort of go out on the street and you see everyone enjoying, and you think, oh, I wish I was with them. And then I used to imagine the scenario of someone jumping from a plane with a parachute. This free fall, right? And I used to imagine that I was, because when I was a kid I had the idea of having an aeroplane that I could pedal myself, right? I always had these fantasies about making my own aeroplane that I could pedal, and I guess it's transcendental. You can fly above all your problems, right? So I always imagine I was in an aeroplane and I had an aeroplane that you could pedal, right? It's hard work, right? And then you get up to a few thousand feet. You see all these people going past you going, wee, we're having great fun, right? And you think, oh, why am I struggling so hard, right? All these people are just, free fall, right? But the trouble is, in material life, you ain't got a parachute, right? So they're having a lot of fun. You're struggling, but a few seconds later, all these people, splat, 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 splat. Right? Not much fun. Right? So everyone's rushing in material life, and we sometimes think, oh, why can't I be like that? But what are they rushing towards? Who knows what's round the corner, right? Because we don't want to be we're going to be nasty. We don't want people to suffer. But at the same time, that's going to come. That's going to come. That's going to come. There's an amazing story, isn't it, about Krishna? I always think that when you can get opposites in a person, especially in a person, qualities, then that can make real depth. It's easy to be one thing, it's easy to be another thing, but when you can get opposites and reconcile them, it gives great depth. It gives great, it's easy to be two-dimensional. I can be humble, Well, how do you be humble without being, low self-esteem? How do you be humble and go out on the street and do big things and preach in a big way, right? That makes depth. You've got to do a big thing. We've got the biggest mission, right? And we've got to be humble. That gives, it's such, when you're opposites like that, it gives room for something that's very, very deep and sublime and wonderful. So what depth is, you've got this little baby. And his friends say he's eating dirt, and his mother looks in his face, in his mouth, and sees the whole universe. And what depth? What depth? Baby is so vulnerable, right? Baby is so vulnerable. Sometimes I sort of do that, I sort of try and imagine, I get into it sometimes, I'm like a little baby, right? It's just like completely open to the universe, like babies are, they don't try and protect themselves, right? I was talking to my materialistic, my Kami brother the other day. He's a good fella. But he was sitting there, and he was talking to me like this. I thought, boy, why not be like that, right? Let's be open. So babies are so open. And yet this little baby, mother looks in his mouth and sees the whole universe. And then she sees India, and then she zooms in like Google Earth and sees India and sees herself. Amazing story. Who can comprehend? Some people would say that's ridiculous. My brain can't take it. But there's an alternative. There's an alternative just to be simple. And think, wow, right? That's the other alternative, right? Amazing. How can you understand a baby anyway? Right? In the womb for 9 months, comes out. They've just, isn't this amazing? I don't know if you heard this. They just found out that a mother's breast milk is different whether it's a boy or a girl. I was completely amazed when I heard that, right? There's actually some difference between the breast milk whether it's a boy or a girl, right? And Krishna, isn't it amazing the way he makes things, right? Hey, we better start having milk with blue tops and milk with pink tops, right? But isn't it amazing the way the material energy works? And it's all little boy. Of course, there's also another big contrast. That's the contrast between us and Krishna. Ano Anyam Mahato Mahayan. We're the small, Krishna's the big. We're the Anu, Krishna's the Vibhu. And actually, when we come to this world, we're attempting to be big. I was thinking, what a lot of energy it must take. What a powerful energy for the small to look big. Right? We're the spark, Krishna's the fire. Imagine a spark against the sun. And you've got to make yourself look big. You're going to have to block out the whole sun. Right? You put the spark in front of the sun. And you want that spark to look big. You're going to have to block out the whole sun. Daiviyesha Gunamai. Imagine what a powerful block Maya has to be. How powerful, right? To screen it out, right? It has to be we're all into big screens nowadays. We have our phablets, right? So it's going to have to be a big screen, right, to block it out, right? That's how powerful Maya is. And we forget ourselves. We forget Krishna. We forget our relationship with Krishna. We forget God's relationship with this world. Dumena vriyate vanya, yata malena. What's it? Yata malena, what's the next one? I've forgotten. Dumena vriyate vanya, yata malena. Yoto bena vrito garbas. The living entity becomes covered. The soul becomes covered. It's like a fire covered by smoke. Or it becomes like a mirror covered by dust. Or it becomes like the embryo covered by the womb. Srila Prabhupada actually gets different analogies there. He says those are different degrees of covering. Different degrees of covering. Passion, goodness, and ignorance. And in the human form of life, that soul is like the fire covered by smoke. You can still see the fire if you've got a mirror covered by dust, and then especially when you've got the embryo in the womb. It's very covered, mode of ignorance. It's a nice analogy, isn't it? I remember years ago I was at a rock festival. The devotees were there, so it was all right. And Srila Prabhupada was very ill at the time, I remember. 76, I think it was. Devotees were there. And I was away from the devotees at the time, and it was the middle of the night, and we had a little fire. And it was very cold. In August, you go to a lot of festivals in that August bank holiday, and it was getting really cold. It was on Windsor Free Festival, just up at Windsor. And we had a little fire, and gradually it went out, and in the end there was a little spark like this. And then the spark went out, and the darkness descended. It was like the end of life, right? But of course, the soul never dies. The spark's always there. And it gives off smoke, and you can't see, when you get a fire, you can't see the fire, so much smoke, you can't see the fire. But by using that smoke, you blow the smoke back into the fire, that fire can begin to burn. And as it burns off the impurities, and it'll burn more, and there'll be no smoke anymore, right? You sometimes get that with a fire, you get smoke in the beginning, but as it gets rid of all the water in the wood and everything, it becomes a clear fire. So in the same way, Krishna consciousness is about working with this material energy to bring out that spark. It's covered by Maya, but that's the smoke. Maya's the smoke. We talk about smoke screen, don't we? In the war, I think, they used to have the Navy, they used to put oil into the ships, right? And then they give off smoke, and then the enemy gets confused, just like actually when Krishna was fighting, they used to send Maya instead, right? Illusions. So we had the smoke screen. So Maya's a smoke screen to defeat us. And in that way we can't see. Another example about us being small, and I'm sitting in just about the right place. It was about, 10, 15, 20 years ago, I was asked to clean one of the chandeliers that used to be here. It used to be glass chandeliers. And I went up to the temple commander and I said, is it all right to kind of turn it around to clean it? Because, if you sort of go from one to the other, you've got to clean, go around. He said, yeah, fine, you can turn it around. So I got up on the ladder and I was turning it around, cleaning. I just turned it a bit more. Poof, smash. 1,200 quid a chandelier on the floor here. And it turns out that it was a screw fitting. It was a screw fitting. And as you turn it round, the screw comes undone. Of course, I asked my temple commander, I got permission probably. And so the little screw like that, and as I turned it round, it unscrewed and then fell off. But there was a little grub screw. Everyone knows what a grub screw is. A grub screw is just like a screw without a head. It can be about 3 or 4 millimeters, right? That's all a little grub screw is, right? That little grub screw had been undone. If that grub screw had been done up, right, it wouldn't have been able to turn it, right? And that little screw had a big, important job. So Srila Prabhupada says, we're like the little screw in the machine, right? You take that grub screw out, it's insignificant. It's a good expression, grub screw, right? Little insect, right? It's unimportant, but it's got a big job. So in the same way, we're a part of when we're connected to Krishna, when that grub screw's in there, when a screw's in a machine, anyone know? Actually, if you get some machines, just one little screw comes out, it won't work, right? You find that. So delicate. But that screw is important. Of course, that analogy breaks down. Srila Prabhupada says a good analogy, the best analogy, it fits in the most ways. This analogy breaks down. Of course, you can learn from that, because it's not that we're screwing Krishna's machine. We're a part of Krishna, and we're useful when we're connected with Krishna. When we're not connected with Krishna, useless. Right? We're useless. Right? Good expression, isn't it? Useless, right? But that breaks down. Why? Because that chandelier was dependent on that screw. Dependent, right? Yeah, you talk about pendant lamps, don't you? Right? Pendant. Pendant meaning it hangs. Dependent. It's dependent. Right? So when you take the screw out, the chandelier falls. And that's where it's wrong, because Krishna never falls down a tutor. Right? Krishna's not dependent on us, right? Krishna can manage without us. Krishna, we don't, like here, the Ganges is full. Right? It's not dependent on, put a bit more water in. Right? Imagine doing that to the Thames the other day, right? You think you're going to get a bit more water in the Thames, right? 20 tons a second. No, 200 tons a second were coming down the Thames last week. You think you're big? You think we're big? Big in this world? Just how much water is in the water? 200 tons a second going down the Thames. See how powerful the material energy is, right? And the Ganges is probably a lot more, right? I mean, someone on the news said this is nothing, right? I think someone in Windsor, Datchet, said, I've been out to India, this is nothing compared to the Ganges, right? So then you offer a little bit of Ganges, well, So then we come, we're a rich man. Oh, I'm giving to Krishna. You put a bit of water in the Ganges, is it going to get any bigger? Right? 200 tons a second, oh, I'm giving some water. How can we be proud of giving something to Krishna, right? What have we got to give to Krishna, right? Well, of course we let people give if they're proud, don't we? We let people give if they're proud, because eventually that pride will be, by purification, that pride will be something. What can we do for Krishna? I do that. I think, wow, what preaching I'm doing. But what preaching is it? What preaching is it really, What what is it really? We're so small. So Krishna does not need us. That's the thing. Krishna can work without the little screw in the machine. But when we're with the screw in the machine, we become useful, as we know. Krishna was telling Arjuna, fight If you don't fight, it'll be done anyway. So we have the opportunity to be linked to Krishna. Krishna will do the job anyway. I don't know if you ever go to someone you need help from and they're needy, it's very dangerous. It's a good job Krishna isn't dependent on us, right? If you have, if you're a child and you have a mother or father who's very needy, it can destroy you, right? They've got their needs, but they've got to sort it out independent. You ever gone to your devotee and you've telling him his problems, and after a bit he looks as worried as you? It's not very encouraging. You've got some problems, you're telling it to someone, and after a bit they're looking sort of, you're feeling depressed, and they look like they're going to top themselves as well, right? That's why Krishna's always smiling, right? When Prabhupada says, when Arjuna was speaking, Arjuna was completely finished, I'll kill all these people. Krishna's just completely chilled, right? No problems, right? And so therefore, that's good. That's good. Krishna doesn't, it would be dangerous if Krishna needed us. It would be dangerous. It's good that Krishna doesn't need us. He's completely able to look after us. No problems. Srila Prabhupada, of course, also gives that example of the hands and the body. And that... Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki, Sitaram Lakshmana Hanuman ki. Gives that nice example of the hand and the body. And I should have found it this morning. I didn't have time. There was a book on, friends of mine wrote for teaching Hinduism in schools, and they actually made that story about the hand into a poem. It was actually a poem one teacher wrote, taking Srila Prabhupada's analogy of the hand and saying how all the hands went on strike and they all got skinny, and then they decided to go back to work and started feeding the stomach and became happy again, right? That old analogy of the hand must feed the stomach to become nourished. So, Krishna's complete. Om punam ada punamidam punat punam adachite punasya punamadaya punameva vishishyate. So Krishna's complete. We're complete. The material world is complete. I think Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj said that people who think they're going to reform the world are themselves in need of reformation. Because the world's perfectly complete. It's happening by Krishna's will. Everything's perfect. Everything's perfect. If you think you can change the world, you yourself are in charge, need a reformation. Maybe we should apply that to ISKCON as well, if we think we can reform ISKCON, right? We're parts of ISKCON. We're parts of the body. We're talking about parts of the body of ISKCON. Reform ourselves, we reform ISKCON. Right? But if we think we need to reform, then we need to look within. So Krishna's complete, we're complete, the material world's complete. That's what the trouble is. We think it's not complete. We think we've not got... That's the whole thing about Vamanadeva had the whole world. We feel incomplete without Krishna. We have to complete it with the material energy. And we have to complete it. I'm not complete. I need more. I need more. I need more. Because we feel incomplete. And I suppose I was thinking about this. It's a really difficult... It's quite a difficult thing to deal with as a devotee. How much do I have? How much do I not have, right? Do you ever find yourself wanting things to make yourself happy? Right? Very difficult. Even if we have the whole world, we will not be happy. And I've quoted this before, but it's one of my favourite quotes from Henry IV, Part 1, which I studied at school, Shakespeare. There was one fellow called Hotspur. Hotspur was the son of Northumberland, and his sort of counterpart, the good guy, was the future King Henry V, who was quite a religious sort of king. Prince Hal. So he was the Prince of Wales, and the other guy, Hotspur, was the son of Northumberland, who was a rebel trying to take the throne. And they met on the battlefield, and eventually future King Henry V kills the rebels. And he said, when he lies dying, first of all he says, he's a chivalrous, he says, fare thee well, great soul. Chivalrous. When that this body did contain a spirit, a kingdom was too small a bound. But now 2 paces of the vilest earth is room enough. A kingdom was too small a bound. A kingdom was not enough to satisfy you. You were never satisfied. You were rebelled. You were greedy. But it was never enough. And you end up just with 2 paces of the violet earth. We all know that. We all know that. We come with nothing, we go with nothing. And it's our rebellious that we have to make our peace with God. We're trying to have things to enjoy. Srila Prabhupada mentions in that verse in the Upanishad, he says that there's this fight between the communists and the capitalists, between the ones that have and the ones that don't have, right? And he says no amount of political maneuvering by the capitalists or fighting over stolen bread by the communists will ever work. It's just cats and dogs fighting. We see the same things going on in Ukraine at the moment. We might be tempted to take sides. Do we side with the government? Do we side with the rebels? No. Both cats and dogs. Of course we should be kind to cats and dogs. Many of the people that are fighting, okay, maybe the leaders are wrong. But what are the underdogs thinking? They've got, I want it. I've not got a job, so I can't buy the latest tablet or something, right? I want a tablet. I need a tablet. So, we have to be satisfied with what we've got. It's not always easy. There's always that fight between... just yesterday, someone was showing me their new mobile phone, and I've got one that costs 35 quid, right? Hardly does a thing, right? And sometimes I find I need something for my service, I have to take it. Sometimes there's been times when I've not been taking something for my service, right? It causes the service, right? Becomes a real struggle. Other times we want something just for sense gratification, we have to say no. Actually, these are all the modes of nature it's mentioned here. Modes of material nature. Passion means I do things, to get things, to have things. I do this, I work hard, then I can get something. Right? Ignorance means I just have to have things. Not always even working, right? You go on the dole or you do gamble or something, right? Don't even work hard. There's not even the mode of passion. I have to have things, I steal. That will make me happy. And then goodness means I am happy. I'm the spirit soul. I can be happy anyway. I can be satisfied. Right? And if I'm satisfied, I can have or not have. Like Srila Prabhupada could nothing or he could take. If he needed things for Krishna service, so if I'm satisfied, I can take or I can give. When I'm preaching, I notice, I say, you have to be very... I want to be honest. At the same time, we have to be honest. And I say to the students, I say, and I'm not just dressing it up for them, but sometimes I'm giving talks to really, rich people. And I don't say you have to be poor. I say to them, it's not that we're saying you don't have to be poor. I'm saying money won't make you happy. But I say you can have money, you can not have money. Right? So the point is, it's not that we're free. We're free as devotees to have or not, because we do it for Krishna. Prabhupada mentions that in one place, because devotee does everything for Krishna, he's free. Everything's for Krishna, so we can take or we can not give. Okay? But actually, in one sense, there's no giving up. Bali Maharaj gave up. Amazing. He was praised for giving up. What an amazing achievement. But actually, there's no giving up. There's one thing I do when I have children here. I have a little Hanuman, a little furry Hanuman. And sometimes I ask the students, we do it with the big students sometimes. We ask the students, who's this? And someone says Hanuman. So I said, okay, you can take Hanuman. And then sometimes I pick one of the little boys or girls and say, no, I'm not going to give him to you. I'm just about to give my little furry Hanuman. I say, no, I'm not going to give him to you. I'm going to give him to someone else. And I say, do you know why? Because I'm going to give you something better. And then under the chodder, I've got this Hanuman that's 5 foot high, right? I've got him from Costco, right? And then I whip off the cover and throw them to them. I'm going to give you something better. And then they're really happy, right? There's a great truth in that. We might be playing around, larking around, but there's a great truth in that. There's no giving up, actually. There's actually no giving up. There's only something better. And the problem is, if we have material vision, we don't see that. We see Rupa Goswami, we think, poor. people in the West see devotees, they think, poor, India's backwards. They don't see the richness within. They can't see that richness within because of the covering of Maya. So there's only, and even in material life there's that. You give up being a baby to go to school to get education. You give up being a brahmaji to be grihasta, which is, higher ashram, more responsibility. We give up for something better. But it's always difficult. There's no way around it. There's going to be a letting go. There's going to be a leap of faith. There's going to be just jump into, and let go. There's going to be that. And that trust and that faith that Krishna will hold us. And of course, Bali Maharaj gained, he became doorkeeper, was it? What happened to Bali Maharaj? He became doorkeeper in one of the planets afterwards, I think. So he gained everything. So there's always that. We're actually gaining, but the trouble is we're hanging on. I did it the other day with one of the kids as well. I gave them something. Actually it was an older student. I just gave him something. I said, okay, I'm going to nick that off you, right? And I went to steal it off him, right? He was going like that, right? And he was hanging on tighter. It actually worked, I was just doing a bit of role playing. He hung on tighter, right? And then I said, okay, let's do that again. I gave him the thing, and then I pulled out something really good. I don't know what it was, something really. I said, hey, look at this. Just took it off him, right? So with a child, you give them a sweet. If they're playing with a razor blade, you give them a sweet. But if you try and grab that razor blade off them, they're going to hang on. So our process is not to tell people not to have. Our process is not to go and criticize people, say, give up, give up, give up, give up, give up. Our job is to say, is to give them something better, to encourage them to just give. I find it difficult to give. I grew up with a family that we were quite poor in many ways, right? So I find I hang on to things. But I see that even when I was something like 10 years old, I went and got my pocket money. And I bought some sherry glasses. Sorry about that. I bought some sherry glasses for my mum and dad, right? But it's the same example. That wasn't my money. That was money given by my father, right? But still my parents were pleased. And probably got drunk. Giving the sherry glasses, right? So it's the same principle. I remember sitting just here, and Rahini Nandan's son, Jiva, I think, when he was small, I remember we were having a feast, and he was over there somewhere with his mum, and I was sitting here, and he came running over and gave me a pakora. I thought, this is really nice, this is a young child, he was getting fun out of it. And then he ran back and got another one, and I was beginning to suffer a little bit after a bit. But he was actually enjoying it. He was actually enjoying it. So it's not that Krishna consciousness is it's not unnatural. It's a natural thing to try and give, and we just have to try and encourage people. It's not so difficult to encourage people just to give. I find when the children come here that we say at first we'd say we have to serve you. You're our guests. We must serve you. And then after a bit we thought, well, this is hard work. What should we ask them to do it? No, we can't ask our guests to help. But then we found out they love doing it. The children would just jump in and start putting the plates out and serving prashadam and can I sweep up? It's devotional service. Patram pushpam palam toyam yoma. And Krishna, the amazing thing is, I'm talking about Krishna being big, he's the biggest. But if we actually give a little drop, toyam, a little drop of water, Krishna will be happy. See how big Krishna is? Krishna's so big that you give him a little thing, he's grateful, and he responds. So if people just give a little bit, even unknowingly, that is the start. And just as Krishna got bigger and bigger, their devotional service will follow the same thing, get bigger. And a devotee is meant to be as big as they can. A devotee is meant to be bright. A devotee is meant to be decorated. We're not going to preach unless we're bright. We're not going to encourage people unless people see examples, smiling faces of people who've given up and they've got some riches inside. So there's nothing wrong with being happy, successful. One can be rich if it's used for Krishna. One can be material prosperous, spiritually prosperous, always prosperous. Because when we put that garland on Krishna, we become garlanded. And if we don't use all our talents for Krishna, if we have false humility, we're not giving everything to Krishna. We've got to give everything, our talents included, our strengths as well. We have to give those to Krishna. So it's very important we find out what we're good at and become successful and do it for Krishna. When I saw my brother was doing a graduation ceremony with Yadunandan Swami and some others over in Radhadesh about 6 months ago, one person gave a talk and said, find out what you're good at and do it for Krishna, Find out, and then someone gave a talk and said, be successful, the next talk. It was very quick, very quick. I'm glad they were quick talks. I don't like long talks at graduation ceremonies and long speeches. Very quick, but very important messages. Find out who you are spiritually, find out who you are materially, link the two, find out what your talents are, give it to Krishna, because if we're not giving who we are, if we're not being successful, if we're not being everything we possibly can be, we're holding from Krishna. Because sometimes that's why we have to look at our narrative, because sometimes we think we're serving Krishna, but we're holding back. Even, like false humility, right? That's a way of holding back, or giving too much. Sometimes we imitate, we give too much, and then we resent it. People come to the movement, and after years they resent it. So what was going on there? Were they actually giving? There were some expectations. But of course, it's always positive if we follow the process, even if we can't give fully in the beginning. Eventually, we'll come to the point of giving up everything. Any questions, please?